guys, this is a new series that I'm calling the One Woman Toastmasters. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but in a lot of my past videos, I do a lot of editing in my talking, and that's because my brain thinks and my eyes read words much faster than my mouth is able to speak them. So I stumble a lot and I stutter a little bit. Right there. I'm hoping through this series I'll learn how to be able to present myself in a better way, in a better fashion, where I don't stutter, where it seems like I'm much more composed. I have several reading materials, and I'm just going to find some kind of interesting articles. It could be short stories, or I have a Tim Ferriss book right here that's under all this crap. Chotomate! Or like this book, where I will just read a couple things from the book, and that way maybe you guys can learn something along with me. So this is the inaugural episode of One Woman Toastmasters, and I think I'm going to read something from this magazine, Wired. Wired is a monthly American magazine published in print and online editions that focuses on how emerging technologies affect culture, the economy, and politics. So today we are going to learn what is inside a triple action mace. What's inside triple action mace? Cry, fry, and die. Ooh, there's a lot of scientific words in here. Alpha chlorase tophany. Okay, the first active ingredient, CN for short, is this early type of tear gas. White powdery CN reacts with enzymes and other molecules on your body, triggering pain and irritation. It also stimulates TRPAI, the receptor that sends pain signals to your brain when you eat wasabi. The result? Your body overflows with tears, snot, and saliva as it attempts to get the CN off. Oh, and it smells like delightful apple blossoms. Interesting. Oleoresin capsicum. Extracted from dried chili peppers, this oily goop is riddled with molecules that bind to the receptor TRPV1, which alerts you if, say, your hand is on fire. One spritz is a cajillion times more burny than eating a habanero, turning your face into a searing world of hurt. UV dye. The formula's third action item is a UV dye, which renders sprays readily identifiable by making them glow under a black light. Mace is coy about which chemicals it uses, but likely suspects include compounds called stilbenes. They're optical brighteners which absorb UV light and reflect blue and purple tinges. Laundry detergents often contain them to make yellowed clothing look whiter and thus cleaner. Dipropylene glycomonomethyl ether. This organic solvent ensures that chlorocn and oleoresin capsicum don't clump up and fail to deploy. D-leminin, another solvent derived from the oil in orange peels. A fragrant molecule called a terpene. It's so good at dissolving things that it's used for tough tasks like removing graffiti and degreasing engines. It also breaks down the neoprene rubber that keeps the mace concealed in the container, which is why it's tempered with lower dipropylene glycomonomethyl ether. D-limonene is also an irritant, familiar to anyone who's been squirted in the eye by an orange when they were peeling. Ooh, that is painful. Dry nitrogen. Compressed and squeezed into a canister, nitrogen gas is the propellant. When you push the button, the nitrogen shoves the pungent, debilitating cocktail along the path of least resistance, up a tube and out onto your soon-to-be miserable assailant. And this piece was written by an Asian, Chelsea Liu, L-E-U. I've never actually met someone with that last name. In certain states, you're not allowed to have mace. You can purchase, possess, and use pepper spray without an FID card. Massachusetts is one of the few states that does not allow mace or any other type of defense spray to be sent in through the mail directly to a consumer. And since that one was kind of short, we'll do another one with less scientific words. And this one is called, it's a Q&A with Mr. Know-It-All. And the question is my browser history fair game for my spouse? By John, who are these people with hard last names? Muallim? Moooallem. Before we... No. It already sounds weird. Okay. Before there were browser windows, there were regular windows, ones you could see through. And one day in 1914, Florence Carmen saw too much. Florence's husband, Edwin, a local physician on Long Island, had an office on the ground floor of their home. One of its windows faced the yard, and through it, Florence apparently spotted Edwin canoodling with a nurse. So the story goes, she hired technicians to install a clandestine? How do you say that word? Clandestine. So the story goes, she hired technicians to install a clandestine listening device. Oh, clandestine means kept secret or done secretively, especially because it's illicit. She hired technicians to install a clandestine listening device in the baseboard of his examining room. A small microphone led to an ingeniously a small microphone led to an ingeniously camouflaged wire, which ran upstairs to Florence's bedroom, where a speaker was hidden in a desk drawer. Now she had a way to keep tabs on Edwin, and, in truth, nothing particularly dramatic happened, until one evening in June when, as Edwin ushered a certain Mrs. Lulu Bailey into his office for an appointment, someone shattered the garden window, reached in with a revolver, and shot Mrs. Bailey dead. The office became a crime scene. Detectives swarmed in. 2 bloodhounds sniffed the ground below the window, circling about before tearing off on a fruitless search. And yet, without anyone noticing, Florence somehow managed to rip out the listening device and stash it in the attic. I thought it was best, she later told police. She understood that her suspicions of her husband would bring suspicion on her, and she didn't want to get tied up in a murder investigation. Knowing she was snared in a tangled web of distrust, Florence had started snipping the threads, but it didn't work. She was eventually charged with murder. In secreting away her surveillance device, it appeared to some observers Florence had been covering her tracks, destroying evidence of her motive. The trial was a high-profile circus, with many sensational twists and turns, and ultimately resulting in a hung jury. In a second trial, Florence was acquitted. The murder was never officially solved, leaving suspicions to fester. I would hate to carry the burden that rests upon the shoulders of Mrs. Carmen, Lulu Bailey's aggrieved widower told a reporter. If she did the shooting, she will never have a happy moment in her life. Now, on to you. You deserve all the happy moments in the world, I can tell. So does your spouse. And fortunately, your predicament isn't nearly as complicated. Your browser history is not fair game for your spouse. I say this because, as the very fact that you're asking the question makes plain, you yourself do not consider it fair game. If you don't feel comfortable with your spouse having open access to your online wanderings, then your spouse can't claim any extrinsic inalienable right to it. There are inevitably idiosyncratic lines of openness and privacy drawn through every marriage. This can be yours. The end. Case closed. Except for one thing. Why? Why does your spouse feel compelled and entitled to look at your browser history, as your question implies they do? And why don't you feel comfortable with it? Am I wrong to detect an erosion of trust in your relationship? Some slippage of confidence in each other? If my suspicions are correct, then I advise you to be careful, because such a disturbance can provoke other disturbances and further slippages, until, in an absolute worst-case scenario, a hand slips through a window and someone winds up dead. Yours isn't a worst-case scenario. It's probably not even a particularly bad-case scenario, but still, it's worth getting to the bottom of whatever caused this impasse. I'd encourage you to ask yourselves why it is that you're asking me this question in the first place. The answer will be somewhere in your history, I'm sure. I suggest you search through it together. I like that one. I'm kind of excited for this series, so hopefully I can bring some interesting articles. And if there's like a particularly... If there is a particularly long story or long article, I'll divide it into several parts. So each video doesn't get weighed down by something. And maybe I'll do some like research on the side about words, definitions, and we can just learn, expand our vocabulary together. Alright, till the next episode. Okay. On the back cover is David Beckham. Oh, I said his name right.